We are now live on Facebook. Welcome, Facebook. Welcome, everybody, to the House District 30 Town Hall series for the summer. This is our first town hall. We'll be having a town hall every Sunday at 3 o'clock right here on Zoom and on Facebook, and we hope that you'll join in. Please feel free to send us content ideas if there's something that you specifically want to hear about and talk about. We have an incredible intern team. My name is Daphna Michaelson Jenet, and I'm the state representative for House District 30. And we have put together an amazing team of interns who are developing our town hall series. And the first thing that they wanted to talk about, which I was so grateful for, was what happened to Elijah McClain and what is going on in our community around that, and the incredible uprising around Black Lives Matter, and how do we fully participate in that situation. So I'm going to turn it over to Talia Richard Landy, who is going to run the show. And she has been an intern with House District 30 for like 3 years running now. She's an amazing young woman, and please introduce yourself, where you go to school and all of that, and take it away, Talia.
Thank you so much, Representative Michaelson Jenet. I'm Talia. I'm 17. I will be a senior at Cherry Creek High School this fall, and I am so happy to be working with the representative again this summer. She's doing such amazing work, and this is the first of our hopefully weekly town hall series where we'll be discussing different topics that are important to not just the representative, but constituents and really just Coloradans. And so this first one, thank you speakers all for showing up to talk about the Black Lives Matter movement and specifically Elijah McClain. So I think how we're gonna start this is just a general overview for everyone. Is that we have questions prepared for each of the panelists. We have general questions and specific ones for each of our speakers. And once we get through those, if there's time, we'll open it up to the Q&A, but we're gonna start with those initial questions. But Daphna, I'm not sure if you wanna talk quickly about what you said your introduction question would be that you added.
Yes, absolutely. So I would like each of you to introduce yourselves. And, you know, we lost an incredible civil rights hero with the passing of Congressman Lewis. And I was wondering if there was anything from his history, you know, since he's passed. There's, I was looking actually for a short video we might show here, but there's so much to read about his history. And I was wondering if there's something that in particular moves you to fight forward. And I can tell you that for me, it was the fact that he went into Bloody Sunday knowing what he was getting into, that he had a peaceful pose on his body, and yet he was violently violated by police. And, you know, as we're trying to figure out how do we change what's going on in our own systems today, earnestly trying to finalize the work that he started, I think that's what drives me. So if you would each introduce yourselves, and Brian has his questions, Talia. I gave Brian his questions, so you can just kind of call on him in order. So introduce yourselves, who you are, and then if you have a something about Congressman Lewis that is moving you forward. So Brian, why don't you introduce yourself first?
Thank you so much, Daphna. It's a privilege to be a part of this distinguished panel and to be appearing with one of my favorite state representatives. This community is just so lucky to have you, and I'm grateful to be on. My name is Brian Mason. I'm running for district attorney in the 17th Judicial District. The 17th Judicial District encompasses all of Adams County and all of Broomfield County. And so that does include a portion of Aurora, and of course includes the portion of Aurora where Elijah McClain died. I work at the DA's office now. I've been there for just over 13 years. I'm a supervisor in the office, but I'm also from Colorado. I grew up in Aurora. And I guess I'll transition into your question, Daphna, by saying this. After college, I had a real honor to work in the Clinton White House for a couple of years. And then when we got kicked out after the 2000 election, I worked on Capitol Hill for a senior member of Congress. And while I was a Hill staffer in DC, I got to watch John Lewis up close. And I didn't ever have the privilege of getting to talk to him personally, but I watched him closely. And here's what I take away from him and his legacy. And that's one, courage, and two, optimism. John Lewis never gave up his optimism. And I feel right now, in the era that we find ourselves in, hard to be optimistic. And yet John Lewis was always optimistic and always courageous. And those are the two principles of his that I try to hold on to.
Thank you for that, Brian. Councilwoman Murillo.
Yes. Would you mind repeating the order of things I should be answering?
Just introduce yourself and any part of Congressman Lewis's legacy that motivates you to fight forward.
Of course. Hi, everyone. I'm really thankful to be joining you all in this conversation. Thank you to Daphna and team for organizing. I am the city council member that represents the Ward 1 area in Aurora, which encompasses both Adams and Arapahoe County. And for me, I find myself reflecting a lot on the legacy of Congressman Lewis, and that he was willing to put his body on the line, right? Like there's just something so personal in putting yourself in the middle of what's happening. We have many protests going on in Aurora related to Elijah McClain. And though my body, I recognize my privilege and not ever being policed in the same way as our Black brothers and sisters, I can't help but finding myself, the only way that I find myself really being able to empathize and really show up for community is showing up for folks who are in the trenches and who are protesting, who are active, who are demanding justice for Elijah, and who have been there this past year. It's been almost a year since his passing. And just recently,
Sounds like we might have lost her. So we'll wait for the councilwoman to make her way back. And may I have Representative Coleman please introduce himself?
All right. I'm probably in an area with not great signal myself, and I will come on the camera as soon as I pull over. All right. What's up, everybody? My name is James Coleman, State Representative for House District 7. But before any of that, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a man of faith, and just super grateful to be able to support and be here with the great Representative Daphna Michaelson Jenet. We are neighbors. She is you are all who are watching this, if you're in the district, you are just to the north of me. And it's just a blessing to have so many great colleagues at the Capitol, but especially a neighbor to the north like Daphna. So grateful for you. And in terms of John Lewis, again, we've all just been super blessed by his life and what he stood for and what he was able to accomplish. I think the one thing that resonates the most with me is that he did so much work with SNCC, otherwise known as SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And in that role, there were 6 individuals called the Big Six, folks like Dr. King, folks like Whitney Young, folks like A. Philip Randolph, who were all in the president's office fighting for civil rights, he being the youngest one of them. And if you didn't know this already, he gave a speech the same time that Dr. King did, the I Have a Dream speech, and he was the youngest person on stage. He was 23 years old. So what I really appreciate about him is that I've been one of the youngest legislators in the building since I got elected. I think I'm the youngest African-American to get elected to the state Senate in Colorado. That is in November, knock on wood.
I was going to say, did you already get elected to the state Senate? I don't remember that election happening just yet.
I may be in November. But either way, by a long shot, love to everybody, love to everybody. But that being said, he really encourages young people like myself, like all of us, to be able to run, especially in times that are trying like this, when we see a lot going on regarding violence, discrimination, prejudice, hatred. I mean, whatever you want to call it within the Black community or against the Black community. So we got to do better. I'm actually headed right now to another event regarding violence in our community. And so I told Representative Michaelson and Jenet it'd be an honor to be on here to talk about some of these issues we face. Thank you so much for having me, and love to John Lewis and his family.
Thank you so much, Representative Coleman. Omar, are you in a position where you can chat? Hello, hello.
Yes, I am. How you doing today? Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can.
Hey, Daphne, I just want to say thank you for all the work you do for the state of Colorado, your advocacy for all the different issues that impact our state, that impacts the city. I know you have your different areas that you represent, but when you take a vote, it's for the whole state. So I just want to say thank you for the work you've done for the Denver metro region, and especially that great city of Aurora, Colorado. With that stated, it's also good to be on here with some of my good friends, Crystal and Brother Coleman. They're doing some great work as well. With that stated, John Lewis. John Lewis was a person that exemplified what was needed in the civil rights movement. When he marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, leading the march and seeing that there were soldiers right in front of him. And the only thing they wanted to do was cross the bridge. And in that case, kneel down and pray. And so as they were just there, didn't have no weapons, nothing in hand, and was trumped over with horses, nightsticks. He suffered a fractured skull. A lot of people don't recognize that. Then they had to retreat back to the church where they started, because the hospital, they didn't know if they were going to get treatment at the hospitals. So they had to set up triage at the church where they started, but they already had it set up because they knew what was going to take place. What does that tell you about our society today? That when people express their First Amendment right, that they're still being hit with tear gas, in some cases nightsticks. So you're telling me from 1965 to 2020, we still haven't changed in how we treat our residents and citizens in the United States. But I won't dive into that just yet. My name is Omar Montgomery. I'm president of the Aurora branch of the NAACP. Looking forward to this discussion. I'm gonna hold off because you know I get a little passionate about these issues.
And that is why you're here. All right, Larry, it's your turn. Introduce yourself and give us your Congressman Lewis memory.
All right. Hello, everyone. I am Larry Thompson Sr, Vice President of the Young Democratic Party for the state of Colorado, Chairman of the City of Littleton Next Gen Advisory Committee, and also your fellow neighborhood worker. And to really sum up, what Representative Lewis represented was really the ancestral passage of what we're trying to receive now with the younger generation. He spoke, he did the things in which the young generation would want to do at this current moment, right? In his time frame when he was there. You know, a lot of times people ask the questions, what would you do in that moment, right? And now the moment is upon us. And people like myself, you know, Representative Coleman, Tay Anderson, you know, with Director Tay Anderson, you know, a lot of us are out here putting in a lot of that work and taking in the blows of, because you're putting yourself out there in such a polarizing climate. Right. So what John Lewis, Representative John Lewis represented for us in the sense of the young African-American nation that's pushing forward now is hope, and not only a hope of time, right, but hope of now. You know, as you see things happening, we can see what happened then, we can feel what's happening now, and that same moment is being relived, right? And his passage right there was a ultimate energy shift, right? Passing on the torch to someone else, allowing a passage for someone else to step in that place. And I see John, you know, Representative John Lewis as that, right? Not only as a leader, but a leader that created a passage, not just a passage for him to sit on, but a passage for the next generation to walk through.
Beautiful, amazing. Okay, I'm tossing it back to Talia, who's going to run the rest of the show. Talia?
Thank you all for your introductions. Before we get into the actual questions, I want to read a statement that Tay Anderson gave to us since he was unable to attend. So he just wanted to share with you all. Community, I am so sorry I cannot join you as I am dealing with a family emergency. It's an honor to serve the students of Denver Public Schools and to consistently be a mental health advocate. I'm looking forward to joining you all in the near future. Your kind words and thoughts keep me going on a day-to-day basis. Continue getting into good trouble as we remember the legacy of Congressman John Lewis. Tay. So with those very kind words, we're going to move into the question section. So I'm going to start out with just the general questions, and I'll just turn it back to all of you, and you can all kind of give your interpretation and your response. So the first question I want to turn to all of you is, what will you continue to do to make a difference in preventing police brutality in our community? So we can just go right back to where we started with Brian Mason, and we'll just move through the line like we did before.
Thank you, Talia. By the way, I think it's amazing that you're 17 years old and you're doing all this. I'm very impressed. Police brutality obviously is a scourge in our society, and it's something that we have to address head on. And in my role as a candidate for district attorney, I say very clearly and consistently that police brutality won't be tolerated if I become the next district attorney for the 17th JD. What we also have to talk about, though, is not just the platitude of saying that it's not going to be tolerated, but what exactly are we going to do? And the first step is making sure that investigations that involve allegations of police brutality, that involve injury or death of citizens in police encounters or in police custody, have to be investigated thoroughly and independently and with integrity. And we also have to be transparent about them. We have to be transparent with the community, talk about the investigation, talk about what it is that we're doing, what we're seeing. And I also believe strongly that when appropriate, we as prosecutors, as DAs, have to be willing to put these cases in front of a grand jury. And that means essentially giving up some power and putting that power into the hands of citizens and letting them look at the case and make a charging decision. Now, that may not be appropriate in every single case, but it's appropriate in some, and we have to be willing to do that. And that's certainly something that I am willing to do if I become the next DA.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I think that it's really important to have those perspectives. Okay, I don't remember who was next. Was it Crystal who's next on our lineup?
I can be. Would you mind repeating the question?
Yeah, of course. 1 second. What will you continue to do to make a difference in preventing police brutality in our community?
Yes, and my apologies for getting cut off earlier. You know, everything's virtual, internet connectivity. But I mean, you know, Elijah McClain is at the forefront of all of our conversations here in Aurora. I actually just recently moved into Adams County portion of Aurora. So Daphna is my representative, and just around the corner from where I live is where Elijah McClain died. And I think when we think about his legacy and how do we honor him moving forward, I think our pursuit for equity in policies and really taking in the national conversation around policing and communities. We know that there are disparate impacts on Black and Brown communities, but in regards to policing, and we would be remiss if we come out of this conversation and this next budget cycle without really evaluating the ways in which community wants to be policed. This is a social contract between our government and our community. And if people are advocating for changes, we have to listen to that. So for me, it really is making those changes in policy, locally, really.
Thank you so much. Next, we'll go to Representative Coleman.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I start to cut out because I'm in an area with not great signal again. So how can I continue this? For me, just continuing to stay Black and be unapologetic about that. That's what it means. You're looking for a tangible answer? Well, in my position in the legislature, I'm gonna continue to work and enhance on the bill that we passed, Senate Bill 217 this year, and make improvements to it, continue to work on other policy regarding not just police brutality, but education, healthcare, housing, economic opportunity. These things are all connected. None of these things happen mutually exclusive of each other. And so we got to figure out a way that when we talk about police brutality and we say very specifically, yeah, these things are, we're being disproportionately impacted by criminalization from police, but we're also being disproportionately impacted by everything else. So I think George Floyd put a very brutal, real perspective on what it looks like to be Black in America. The knee on the neck isn't just because of cops. The knee's on the neck in every way. And because we had a Black president, because we got a couple Black elected officials, because a couple Black folks made money, I don't mean we've been successful as a culture. Those are a couple of folks. And so, you know, the question is always, well, they did it, how come you can't? I gotta be honest with you. Not everybody has the same opportunity. I think everybody had the same opportunity. We have equality, which is dope in some cases, I should say many cases, as it relates to this country, but we don't have equity. And we always talk about that word, but it just means that I have the same opportunity as you do. And not everybody is born, you know, with access to the same resources. So there's that, but there's also in the legislature that we're working on, but it's also the community. This conversation, for instance, we have to lead this conversation. Now, that's probably going to be a question coming up later. And what does that actually look like? But at the end of the day, we've been taught to hate ourselves. Malcolm X said that. We're the only people that feel like we can't be honest about supporting each other because we don't want to be seen as reverse racist or segregationists. Congregation is completely different. It means I decided to come together with a group of people for a cause and for a purpose, and that I'm not separating myself from other people. The other folks want to be involved in that, they can too, right? But we've been taught to hate ourselves. We're ashamed to even work and make these impacts. And again, that's why I started off by saying, I got to stay Black, because we go from being the representative of the Black community in the boardroom to being pacified, and then we end up back in the community as a representative of white people to our Black community. There's a difference. So there's a lot that I think I can do or we can all do. But for me, the most important thing, no matter what position you're in, if you're watching this, you may not be an elected official. If you're a Black person, be proud of who you are.
Thank you so much, Representative. Now we'll go to Omar Montgomery.
I want to say I am highly impressed by your skills as well. At the age of 17, I was still trying to figure out if I could score 15 points on the basketball court, and where I was going to eat the best burgers in Los Angeles, California, where I grew up. So I want to say I'm highly impressed with the work you're doing, and thank you for leading this panel. In regards to police brutality, you know, there's a lot of things we can do, and I really focus on the city of Aurora, and two things, and the few things we've done with the Aurora branch of the NAACP is, one, doing what we could to influence diversity in our Civil Service Commission. Our Civil Service Commission is one of the key areas where hiring takes place, as well as the termination of officers when recommended by the police chief for those who've either abused their powers or done something against what they've done, what they've made their pledge for to protect the city. We didn't have diversity on that Civil Service Commission, and several times there were officers that were recommended to be terminated, recommended to be suspended, fired, or whatever, and it was overturned. Now that we got some diversity on that Civil Service Commission, I truly hope that we're able to see a difference now when those recommendations are, when someone's recommended to be terminated, and that person, you know, has done wrong after a thorough investigation, because we want to give them their due process, that they are terminated, it's upheld, and that person is no longer part of the police force. Second, we have the nomination of a new police chief. This is what I call the perfect storm for the city of Aurora. We have two judicial elections, Judicial 17, which is what Brian Mason is running for, and I think he's doing a fabulous job. And we got Judicial 18, where we have Amy Patterson and another gentleman by the name of John that's running. I think Amy is an excellent candidate. So if we're able to get these elections right, get the right police chief, and have our residents actively involved, not just in these elections, but also holding people accountable that is in charge of our law enforcement, not just through protests, but serving on boards, serving on commissions, making sure that your voice is heard, we can see a change in our policing. And as long as we have great people like Crystal Murillo in City Council, representing Ward 1, making sure that our budget is being used right when it comes to policing, making sure that people are held accountable who are abusing their power, whether if it's an elected official or whether if it's a law enforcement officer. I feel like the city of Aurora can make some great progression in going from the concept of policing to the concept of peacekeeping, which are two different philosophies when it comes to law enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And last but most definitely not least, Larry Thompson.
Well, thank you for that. Okay, so to piggyback off of you know, the good gentleman that preceded me, I called my process the CPE, and being the vice president of the Young Democratic Party, I could utilize the CPE method very well, which is community organizing, community involvement, making sure the community understand, community awareness, you know what I mean, community education. That's potent for the C. Then you have the P I'm sorry about that. CPE, and then you have P, which is for the position of understanding of the paradigm shift that's going to be taking place, right? So that's a generational thing, a generational intervention position that I am looking to really try to hone in on, right? Because what is here now is here now, right? And you have to work with those that can be mended, those that can press forward, right? So with the community involvement and the paradigm shift that's taking place, and then we're putting pressure on people of position, right? And preparing the next electoral positions of people to get involved, right? You have to groom them up before they get in. So we know that these people that are about to be elected are people that we work with. They have the same vision aligned with us. And E stands for the electorate, which is those that we really have to focus on, right? The policy makers, which P was for the policy, but paradigm, I want to shift the P with the E, is more so for the electorate. So they do the policies, right? So if we have the right community pressure, community involvement on these positions, then that shift can take place, as we saw in SB 217, right? You know, that alone is a perfect example of pressure, inside pressure and outside pressure, collaborating on a situation to better our people moving forward. So that I call it the CPE process method, right? And along with continue to empower people to be in position to take authority. You carry the big stick of justice. So when you are out there protesting, when you're out there trying to push a policy, when you're out there trying to push a political figure, understand you have the power to do that as a person that puts in their vote and their time and their dedication in the United States of America, being as citizens and the taxpayers. So CPE, educating, getting people involved, and really putting pressure on those in power to make the policies right.
Thank you all so much for those responses. So now we're going to move on to our next question, which is kind of flipping it onto the audience. So the next question is, how can we as a community do our part in advancing this cause and making sure that Black lives do matter in our community? So we'll take it right back to Brian Mason and start over with that.
Well, that's a great question. I guess there's lots of ways. First of all, as a community, we have to make sure that your voices are heard, and your voices can be heard in a whole lot of different ways. I'm a candidate for political office right now. I want people to make their voices heard at the ballot box. So I want you to vote. But voting alone, of course, is not where it stops. Then you also have to make your voices heard by making sure that you influence public officials once they get into office. And a good public official wants to be influenced. A good public official wants to hear from their community, and members of the community have to be involved. It's always a little bit discouraging to me as a first-time candidate for public office when I talk to some people to see how uninformed a lot of people are in our community. And I think, honestly, the Black Lives Matter movement has exposed just how uninformed a lot of people are, or frankly, the vast majority of people are, about the Black experience in the United States. So the first responsibility of citizenship, and the first way to be to answer your question, Talia, is to get involved and to be informed and to make sure your voice is heard.
Thank you so much. Now, Crystal Murillo, what are your thoughts?
Oh man, I have a lot of thoughts on this. We wouldn't be here having this conversation about Elijah McClain if Jenet McClain, Candace Bailey, Lindsay Minter, and crew didn't fundamentally stop, and April didn't fundamentally stop believing that somebody that they cared and loved for mattered. Though they aren't law enforcement, that they don't all necessarily have specific credentials, but that they are just unapologetically members of the community, and that they get to decide what we do and do not accept as a community, right? Like, that's what I was trying to get at earlier when I said, and I was talking about the social contract, right? About how we choose to, and what as a community we choose to accept when it comes to policing. We are all individual members that have our own lived experiences, and collectively we decide what we are okay with. And so all of that to be said is that keep speaking up. We've gotten tens of thousands of emails and phone calls. I know Representative Michaelson Jenet has also been included in those emails and voicemails as well. People who have organized locally, nationwide, who just fundamentally believe that what happened was not okay, and that they refuse to let his name go away without meaningful action. And sometimes that change is uncomfortable, but people, we listen, we hear you when you email and leave us voicemails. It may not feel like it, like at times, but we understand the volume of people who are weighing in on the conversation, and the fact that the energy still persists a year later after his death means a lot. And as a legislator who is real time having to work through all of those things, I'll say, as much as it is work for me, that is such a small price to pay in terms of hearing from community, even if I don't specifically represent them. Like, I understand that there are people who care about these issues and that are willing to speak out against them. So I would just say, continue to do that, right? And then also lead with the community you're trying to impact in mind. We are seeing leaders arise and emerge not because it's convenient, but because it's out of necessity. They see their lives on the line, and they're willing to put their lives on the line to speak out. They don't know what's coming as a result of that. We don't know if there's any retaliation. These are people in our community that still have to work, who still have to engage with everybody. And despite having insecurities and fears about how they'll be received, they're still being unapologetic in their advocacy. So also making sure that you are deferring to those voices who have been there since day one. I know this may, and we might want to engage in as many ways as possible, and I encourage that. But at the end of the day, have you consulted with people who have been at the forefront of organizing, who have put their bodies on the line for seeking justice towards for Elijah McClain? Can you answer that as a yes? Because if you haven't, I would ask you to reevaluate the way in which you choose to show up.
Thank you so much. Now we'll go to Representative Coleman.
Yeah, number one, show up when it's hard, not when it's easy, right? We just got finished hearing about Jenet McClain. Jenet McClain, once we passed 217, looked at us and said, thank you for passing this bill, but where were you when we needed you? That was last year. We love George Floyd. We pray for him and his family, but we have that right here in our backyard. So where were you when it happened to Elijah? Where were you when it happened to Devon? in Colorado Springs. That's right here. So, you know, I mean, even for me, that was something that I had to learn, a tough lesson, right? There's no excuses. Oh, that's Aurora. Oh, we don't want to step into somebody else's territory. Oh, we want to kind of like, nah, I don't have to say nothing. And that's my second point. Just show up. Just show up and turn the cameras off, man. You know, like we turn the cameras on when you get in police and we want that to be recorded. But if you turn the cameras on when you out at a rally or a protest, you up here trying to be seen, okay? This is about the work. The folks who should be seeing it should be there in person. So don't be like, well, we want to make sure they need to be at the rally next time, unless they're out of state or somewhere where they can't come. I think one person documenting this, that's good, and share it broadly, or a couple of people, but I see like 50 cameras and people talking about, I'm here. Okay, thanks for letting everybody know. Do it for the right reason. Don't be showing up at these rallies and these protests because you want to be seen, because that's the difference between a protest and a riot. People acting a clown, throwing up signs, smiling, laughing, when it's a very serious situation. So again, I think it's really important for folks to show up when it's difficult, not just when it's easy. I think it's really important for folks to show up for the right reasons and not be having cameras on, and know your role. That's number 3. I'm a politician. I'm a Black man. I grew up here in Colorado, grew up right here in Denver and Park Hill. I got kids. Nobody sees me as a parent. Nobody sees me. They see me as a politician, even though I play all those roles. So in that role, when I go to this community meeting I'm headed to right now, there are dudes who's really in these streets working with these kids. So I'm there quiet. Everybody know we can talk, but take a great look at Representative Daphne Michaelson Jenet. How many words has she said on this? She provided us a platform to be able to share with folks in her community, folks who follow her, who watch her, what the perspectives are of people of color. And me in particular as a Black man. That's powerful. But she ain't saying nothing. Not because she's complicit, but because she understands there's a place for her to speak and there's a place for me to speak. And there's a place for both of us to speak. But she created a platform for us. So that's what you can do to be helpful as well. Create platforms. It's very hard to be quiet because you want to feel like you're defending someone or helping someone, but you never help somebody the way that you want to help them. You help them the way they want to be helped. You ever try to help somebody and then ask for your permission? And that backfire and blow up in your face, even though you meant well? So it's good to go to people and say, listen, I got ideas, perspective. Yeah, I think I know the solution. What do you need? Really? How can I help you? How can I serve you in that way? And sometimes the answer is nothing. Sometimes it's pray for me. Sometimes it's show up to the rally. At the end of the day, you don't need to put on a show. Sometimes your actions speak louder for you just by being present. So thank you, Representative, for hosting this and allowing us and creating a space for us to be able to have this conversation.
Thank you so much. Now we'll turn it back to Omar Montgomery.
And I believe the question, just so I can remember, was about how can community get involved in issues like this? Am I correct? I think you've seen the community in action. They've been out there protesting. They've been at the Capitol. They've been at the City of Aurora Municipal Building, the police station, letting it be known that we want to see a change. Part of it is protests. The other part is how do we get these active voices on our boards and commissions? How do we get these active voices in some of our community organizations like the NAACP, ACLU, and some of these other organizations that advocate for these things, as well as making sure that we cast that vote and make sure we voting for people that align themselves with the values that we have. These are just some of the simple things that we can do for our voice to be heard during public announcements during the city council meeting, where you're able to either write a letter or physically be there to share something that is on your heart, so that your elected officials know what our community wants and what our residents want. I think Crystal said it best when she talked about Lindsay, Crystal, April, and a few others who have done some great work on the Elijah McClain case. Then we got people that's fighting for homelessness. We got people fighting for poverty. We got people fighting for education. We have so many different things that we're trying to address as a community that there's plenty of examples of what community involvement look like. Even if it's as simple as picking up the phone, calling your congressional leaders, calling your senators, calling your state representatives, calling your state senators. If it's just picking up the phone, making that phone call, or just having dinner at your house with your family and discussing these issues, regardless if people look at it differently. There's so many different things that we can do. Some people say, well, that's not protesting, that's not this. Not everyone has to be in front of the protest. Not everyone has to serve on boards and commissions. Sometimes it's what you do right in your home is some of the best community involvement we could have. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And finally, we'll turn it back to Larry Thompson.
All right, thank you. And the question, how can the community get involved? You know, if we dissect the CPE, sorry about that. If we take out the C and the CPE, you know, that's the focal point of the community that I was speaking of, right? And if you dissect that and put it into the terms of what needs to be done based on positions and roles and responsibilities, right? That's when you can get a sense of entitlement and you see the community getting active in what's going on. And myself, as you know, as we speak about these certain situations as well, I've been in all, you know, not all of them, I'm gonna say about 60% of the protests. I've been behind the scenes. And a lot of times people ask me of these situations and, you know, I try to really show them that, you know, community does not mean just because you at a protest that you're a part of the community, because just like Representative Coleman was saying, some people there with the camera, right? And it's all about intention. And that alone is the issue, right? It really creates a division in the picture and the narrative that we're trying to get the community to come together, right? Because that's an ideological battle right there within the community, that some people are there for this and some people are there for action. Recipe for right, in which Representative Coleman was speaking about. So that you know, for the community is that what's happening with the protest, yes, you can continue to do that. That is great. And we're not here to fight that, resist your role. But yes, we all have a role and we must take on that role and stop crossing lanes into other people's roles. Because when we do that, then we're missing the job that we need you to be doing, right? A part of the community. So it's really one large puzzle for the community to press forward is be your piece in the community. Don't try to be somebody else's piece. You won't fit in your spot, in their spot. So just play your role and continue to support those who need the support.
Thank you so much. So we're going to turn it back to the representative real quick.
No, don't turn it to me just yet. What we're gonna do, we have about 15 minutes left on our time together. And what I'd like to hear is, what do you wanna leave us with? What do you wanna make sure that the people who are listening here have heard? And how can we serve you best in your personal next steps? And I'm gonna flip the order all around, and we'll start with Representative Coleman.
Hey, thank you so much. Never forget this movement, because otherwise it will become a moment. When Trayvon Martin died, I had what was called the Trayvon Martin effect, where we would wait a couple of weeks or maybe a couple of months, and then we would revert back to our ways. And it's almost like it never happened until another one happens. So for me, I'm gonna tell you right now, we ain't never going back. Things will never be the same in this country. COVID-19 has a lot to do with that, because a lot of people had an ability to see this for what it was because they weren't as busy. Sometimes when you, either intentionally or unintentionally, sometimes you don't see things. And we say it's not because we don't care, it's because, well, I would go to the rally, I'd go to the protest, I would show up, I would do X, Y, Z, but I got to provide for my family. It doesn't mean I don't care, right? I mean, I'll make a Facebook post or whatever, but it's like, nah, they ain't gonna never change back to that. Because now we have been seeing things that have been happening for 400 years in a very real way, right? When we passed 217 and we put in that fleeing felon piece, so that when you're running away from a police officer, they can't shoot you in your back because you're not a threat. That's slavery. I'm on the plantation trying to get away, and he hit me in the back with a rifle before I can cross the line. That's been happening. So we had to really like not walk around in grief and sadness, but just never lose this emotion that you had when you saw a man's life leave his body after 9 minutes. When you saw a man call out for his mother and she's dead. George Floyd's mother is dead, but with a knee on his neck, he called out for mama because he felt like his life was leaving his body and he was helpless, and he was, and it was. So again, it's not just about police brutality. I know we're being very specific on what it is you can do. I need y'all to understand this is a cultural mindset. Not only do we not feel like we're valuable as Black people, but other people make us feel the same way. So we don't want patronizing. We don't want flattery. We want just the same opportunity as everybody else. And if you look at yourself and you say, look at what I have, look at what I was given, look at the platform I was given to start my life on, and all the opportunities that have come since the beginning of that, just go and have a conversation with somebody. Seriously, you can't get to know somebody unless you understand them. You can't understand them unless you have a conversation. So just have a conversation and don't feel like it's always people talking about, woe is me, pity me because I'm Black. These things are real, man. And now you're just seeing it with all the social media. These things are for real, and it's way deeper than that. So for me, the way you can help me, have a genuine conversation with somebody that's Black. When you see these kids out here and you know, you may feel uncomfortable, you may want to walk across the street, but just talk to them. You ain't got to be weird about it. Just say, you know, hey, can I talk to you real quick? Many of y'all brothers been picking up on ladies and ladies been picking up on men. You got to go engage them. Hey, can I talk to you? You ain't got to ask for their phone number, but can I talk to you? Hey, I know this is mad weird, but I don't understand what it's like being you, what it's like being Black. Maybe you're good. Are you good? Great. But if you're not, like, what's something that I can do? And you ain't got to go up to a complete stranger. When you go to a meeting and everybody's talking about the same issues, just find somebody different and get to know that person. So for me, I think that that's really critical in terms of your ability to be able to understand, and then never lose this. Never feel like this is just a moment. This is a movement, and we got to keep this up in every capacity. Really appreciate the opportunity to be able to share with y'all.
Sorry, I forgot I was driving now. Thank you so much, Representative Coleman, and I'm so grateful for your presence here today. I'm gonna hop over to Councilwoman Murillo, please.
I'm really glad you called him. I was like, I hope I follow him. I think the world of Representative Coleman. And I would want to echo some of the comments that he made, but also with an asterisk, right? It is not people of color's job, Black people, to do the emotional labor to describe their lived experience for your learning pleasure, right? Like, so I want to make that really clear. And I know that is, I think it's two sides of the same coin, right? Like, how do we open ourselves up to listening to authentic lived experiences, while also not putting the burden on people of color to do the people of color work, right? To explain their lived experience, because that already is in a lot of ways traumatic. So I just wanted to add that. But what I would hope people would take away from this conversation is, as theoretical and moral as this conversation is that like my colleagues at the state level know, there's actual policies that solidify and that cement our will in law and in policy. And I would say we are leaning on their expertise as much as here in Aurora, we're at the front lines at a lot of in this conversation, right? And we are in the midst of our budget cycle. And so what I would advocate and ask you all to understand is that here in Aurora and in other cities, but in particular in Aurora, we're having real-time conversations about where our budget goes, right? We know COVID has impacted us, right? We're talking about $25 million here in Aurora. But we're also talking about structural systemic changes about policing, right? Admittedly, I'm not the foremost expert in all of the things when it comes to policing, but when I do my research around the history of policing in our country, you read that policing started as slavery roundups here in our country. And that's a real thing we have to recognize about how our systems have started and grown, right? And how we choose to move forward, and the philosophy around policing in our community. So we're going to be making structural changes from the city management level as well as the city council level moving forward. We're in the midst of that. Our budget cycle, I think our first public presentation around the budget is early August, and I think it ends end of September. So tune into city council meetings, have a conversation. I invite you to reach me at our city council meetings, on email, what you have it, because we're at the front lines of solidifying in policy what this conversation in theory looks like, expanding on SB 217, and being very granular. That's what local government does. We are at the forefront of these conversations. And if you're not in Aurora, I implore you to look at Denver city budget, Inglewood, Greenwood, Arvada, Commerce City, all of the different localities and ways in which you can manifest this movement into long-term policy.
Beautiful, Crystal. And I'm so grateful that you are on city council. You have no idea.
Thank you, Daphne.
An excellent call to action. Brian.
Thank you so much for hosting this. It's such a great discussion and such an important one. If there are two things that I would want people to be left with, it's the following. One, I will echo what Representative Coleman said, and that is, this can't be a moment, it needs to be a movement. And for it to be a movement and not a moment, we have to keep the momentum, to use 3 M words in a row. And that momentum means that people have to stay engaged and have to stay involved and continue to put pressure on our local officials and our leaders, like those of us on this call, but also continue to engage in the conversation with our neighbors, with our families, and with our friends. I'm struck by the fact that over the course of our history, we've made big strides at different times. And when I reflect on John Lewis and Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement of the 1960s, one of the biggest accomplishments of that movement was the 1965 Voting Rights Act. And that changed America in a way that nobody could have expected in 1960 or 1955. And yet, just a couple years ago, the Supreme Court of the United States essentially gutted that bill. So we make big strides forward, but then we take steps back. And that's why it's so important that we realize now in 2020 that this is not just a moment, it's a movement where we have to take strides forward, because there are going to be steps back along the way too. That's my first point. The second point that I would want people to be left with is that elections matter, and elections have consequences, and it matters who we put into these important positions. And certainly from my perspective, it matters who the district attorney is. The criminal justice system is under scrutiny as never before. Good. It should be under scrutiny as never before. And we need to have leaders in the criminal justice system who welcome that scrutiny and who are willing to take a hard look at how we do things, why we do things, and what we can do better and what we can change, because we must do better and we must change. And having leaders of integrity and district attorneys of integrity who understand that is important. And certainly that's why I'm running. And I will just put in a plug. I would love to have support and help from anybody who's watching this. Please feel free to go to my website at www.brianmason.us. Get in touch with me. I welcome your support and your help. Thank you so much, Daphne.
So grateful for you, Brian. Thank you so much for participating. Larry, it's you.
Could you repeat the question for me? I want to be fresh off the boat with you.
You're going to be fresh off the boat with what are your next steps and how can we serve you? What do you want us? This is your closing statement. What do you want to make sure we take away?
The main thing, I'm going to give you 2.5 points. We got a 3, but I'm going to call it 2.5. The first point is that what's happening now is the paradigm shift of everybody else. For the Black community, you know what I mean? We've faced these tsunamis over and over. You know what I mean? Right after Martin Luther King passage, the many riots that took place, right? This is not new, but the thing about what's happening now is that it's a shift in a paradigm that's occurring while it's happening, right? So it's a generational shift that's occurring. And what we can do in support is 2 things. The first thing I would want to start off is that, you know, support the AAICD, which is the African American Initiative for the Colorado Democratic Party, you know, because these are Black, you know, African American based issues, right, in the political spectrum. So it specifies in the needs of the Black people, and you know, we do 95% of us tend to vote Democratic. So with that being said, the needs that we need obviously need to be more involved, but we got to understand this too. A reason why a lot of people aren't involved. I'm gonna give you a prime example, me myself, coming from Mississippi. I came from the heart of Mississippi. I grew up in a town of 96 people. And what that taught me was that you really have to want and be introduced to these type of changes to make these things work. And exposure, like direct exposure, not word of mouth exposure to get somebody to vote. It's direct exposure. If you want interaction, if you want people to really believe in the process of, you know, of the political process. And that is what I'm really here for as well as the vice president of the state of the Young Democratic Party, is to really create a atmosphere that creates responsibility and awareness. And that way we have more people involved. Say people are running for office. We have more young people are part of this, have more interest in the game, have more say. So we won't feel as if, okay, they're just talking, but we get no results. Okay, now if you start doing something, you can tug. It can't be just talk. Now it's action. Now it's a battle off. Who's gonna vote more, right? So that is the essence, is that, you know, with the AAICD, you know, if y'all want to donate to push towards the cause for the African American Initiative, which we can in turn put into the African American candidates that are running with that. But also, we want to make sure that we put it in a position of being able to help every candidate. So me being a Young Democratic Party, I'm here to help every single Democratic candidate, more specifically, to make sure that they get the support from the young people, right? Because that alone is the structure that we're going to get to implement the uphill of what's happening. So to wrap all it up is, let's focus on the young people, because they're right now, they're active, but they don't know where to put the antennas towards. And I'm working on putting the antenna. When I say young, you know, 40 and under, 40 to 18, you know, the antennas are on loud, and well, really, I really say 60 is younger, but we're going to talk about that later though. But 40 and under, so we got to focus on them, and I'm hitting it hard along with the rest of the CYD board. You know, we got Tay Anderson, we got Morgan Waters, we have so many other young activists that are really out there, a part of the board, really pushing the narrative. So that's my spiel. Please assist however you can in the mid moves. And don't lose hope, because this is not a moment. This is a movement moment. This is something that's about to change. It's a paradigm shift.
Oh, Larry, you just called me old, but I'm going to, you know, keep supporting you anyway. Whatever.
70, I'm sorry.
Whatever. Okay. And for the final word on the matter, I bring you Omar Montgomery.
First, before I say just my final words, Daphne, I just want to say thank you for this amazing platform, and thank you for inviting me to be a part of what I perceive to be a very great panel of individuals who've been doing the work. Larry, I see him at the protest. you and Coleman up there at the State House, making sure that you're representing the voiceless, and Council Member Murillo, who represents what I think is one of the most difficult wards to manage, which is Ward 1 in the city of Aurora, and is doing an amazing job. The reason why I started off saying that is because before Ahmaud Arbery, we have been doing the work. Think about YASPA with Janice Mackey, who's just now become Dr. Janice Mackey. She has been teaching our young people how to vote, how to advocate for themselves, how to go up in front of the school board and make sure that they have their voice heard in their own future education. You have YMOP, Young Men of Purpose, right there in Aurora, Colorado, who's saying, hey, we're going to try to put an end to the senseless violence that's happening in our community. We have people that's been doing the work. The difference is now is that we have more people recognizing how much more work we have to do in order to address the issues that are on the forefront. And let me put it in two separate categories. One, hashtag Black Lives Matter deals with our police brutality and making sure that we have people who are not abusing their authority, and if they do, that they're held accountable, especially when it comes to the African American community who's been dealing with these issues. And me personally, I can't tell you how many guns I had pulled on me. I've been hit with nightsticks. I've been put in chokeholds. So for me, this is personal when you see change in the criminal justice system. Now, let's take the hashtag off and talk about Black Lives Matter as three separate words. Now we're talking about the whole being of a person: education, economic justice, environmental justice. We're talking about making sure that they are being represented where traditionally they have been left out. And if we're able to come together as a community and make sure that all those that have been left out traditionally, that they have a voice, because we have great people that's been elected, great people that's been voted for, great people that's upholding every single thing that we do, then I think our future looks bright. Our future looks amazing. And because this change is happening now in America, in Colorado, in the Denver metro region, in Aurora, Colorado, we're going to see so much change that we're going to be able to sit back and focus on other issues that impact our community. So I'm looking forward to this bright future. Thank you.
Oh man, I knew picking on you to end the conversation today, bookend with the amazing Representative Coleman, all of you, Brian, Crystal, Larry, I can't thank you enough. An extra special thank you to Talia and the entire Black Lives Matter team of House District 30 for pulling together this amazing group of people. I am incredibly grateful for you all. And I hope that those of you at home who are watching and who are listening have heard what I heard, that sometimes it's your turn to step back and listen and then follow the lead of others. Don't forget to actually participate, even if you're not leading the way, because sometimes that participation is far more important than your perceived leadership. So thank you to everybody, and Representative Coleman, nice mask, masks up, Colorado. Everybody be safe out there. Talia, you're an amazing, amazing young woman. And let's actually lead the way towards, a world where Black and brown and white people actually have the same levels of freedom. And here's to freedom. Thanks, everyone.